In addition, Sylvia wasn't slacking off either. Earlier, she had been deeply reflecting on her inability to do anything when her daughter, Omija, was in danger. She was now on high alert, preparing herself to handle any similar situations in the future. Leon, Omija, and Sylvia, these three share a common trait in their specialization in speed-enhancing abilities, but each has their own unique characteristics. Omija excels in endurance, boasting the fastest speed over long distances. In contrast, Sylvia possesses the ultimate skill King of Thunderstorm, Indra, which grants her the fastest speed over short distances. Naturally, Sylvia also has the shortest time to reach top speed, capable of reaching an instantaneous speed of 100 km per second, a speed that surpasses even Milim, making her unparalleled in that regard. Then again, this would require advanced preparation. If Sylvia had been able to move freely at will, she would have unquestionably claimed the title of the strongest. However, that was not the case. Just as lightning advances by partially ionizing the air, which does not conduct electricity, to create a path, Sylvia's movement required a similar process. The fact that she could not instantly and freely change her trajectory was the weakness of this authority lightning flash. Still, there was no mistaking that it was useful. If she could make use of that speed, she should have been able to dodge it later, even if someone was in a pinch. That was what Sylvia believed, and she decided on her role. Now that they're in a 3+1 situation, the psychological and physical burden on Zalario has been reduced, and they've begun to see a way out of this anti-Feldway battle. But that wasn't the case for Veldora. It's the real deal, without any explanation. Furthermore, if he made a small mistake, Chloe would shower him with harsh reprimands. Unlike Leon, Veldora has no hobby of enjoying being scolded. On the contrary, due to the terrifying experiences instilled in him by his two older sisters, he unconsciously developed a psychological trauma, where a beautiful woman equals something scary, which was engraved deep within his heart core without him even realizing it. This left Veldora unable to defy Chloe and being manipulated as she pleased. There. Don't use brute force against Milim. Be sure to parry. Yes. Veldora would be severely reprimanded just for trying to catch Milim's fist and bring her into a contest of strength. He felt sad, but needless to say, Chloe's instructions were precise. She was only being strict because there was no room for leniency, and every word she said had meaning. Chloe, who had rewound time and guessed about Milim's power many times, had come to a single conclusion. That meant Milim's power was inexhaustible, and the more she fought back, the higher her power would rise. This wasn't wrong. Milim's ultimate skill, King of Wrath, Sadnal, was an exceptionally straightforward ability. It responded to Milim's anger, generating and amplifying magicules as a result. Its upper limit was virtually boundless, and in a berserk state, it could potentially lead to infinite proliferation. Chloe had almost perfectly grasped this and was preventing Milim from using her power. The more Milim activated King of Wrath, Sadnal, the stronger the defenses needed to withstand her. Ensuring that Milim did not grow any stronger was the most critical objective in this battle. Sorry. I can't afford to explain, so you'll have to follow my instructions for now. You have a reason, don't you? Very well. In that case, I shall obey you. Chloe, fully aware of the danger, used thought communication to contact Veldora. Since she was the strongest on her own, she was not accustomed to fighting in coordination with others. In truth, she didn't want to reveal too much of her hand, considering the possibility that their strategy might be intercepted. Veldora accepted this. Or rather, the idea of disobeying her never occurred to him. Since he couldn't complain at this point, there was no turning back. He followed Chloe's lead and ended up being forced to work like a carriage horse. Feldway was by no means skilled with the sword. In terms of overall strength, he was superior to Zalario, but judging from his combat ability alone, there was a chance that Zalario would win. However, that was assuming that Feldway hadn't brought out the main body. Now that Feldway had brought out its main body, it had become overwhelming compared to before. Even if you only look at the amount of energy and stats, it's more than a few times that of the Zalario in every way. It wasn't an opponent he could win in a normal fight. The only thing Zalario is winning is his swordsmanship, so if he doesn't find a chance here, he won't stand a chance. From the first move, Zalario had given his all against Feldway. He'd launched a fierce attack, thinking that if there were no openings, he'd just have to create them. And then, something felt off. Was this guy this strong? The reason he felt that way was because his own sword was easily parried. Zalario is cool-headed. He was a warrior who steadily did good work without overconfidence in his own power. That skill level is also high. Without relying on excessive techniques, his straightforward swordsmanship is solid and powerful. He is a master of the strong blade, capable of cutting down any foe with a single strike. Though not as extraordinary as Feldway's arc, Zalario's beloved sword was also a magnificent blade. However, when he struck Feldway with his dependable companion, the attack was effortlessly deflected. He could accept it if he could take it in stride, but that reaction was unexpected to Zalario. Since their speed and power surpassed Zalario's, it seemed easy to effortlessly block and deflect Zalario's sword. Zalario had anticipated this and was aiming for a follow-up attack after being deflected, but here, the momentum was completely stopped. Zalario is wary that this is abnormal. He observed Feldway, but he couldn't read anything from his beautiful expression. His intuition as a master told him this was dangerous. He parried my sword. Feldway didn't have this level of skill. Deflecting Zalario's mighty sword is not something that can be done with sheer strength alone. It requires a certain level of skill and proficiency. As far as Zalario knew, Feldway had never undergone any sword training. He had no experience fighting on the front lines, and had always held the position of a commander. He admitted he was strong, but he shouldn't have been a warrior. Perhaps that question was written all over his face, because Feldway looked at the Zalario and laughed. Ha, strange, isn't it? Yeah. You were never interested in martial arts, were you? That's right. The strong are those who are born strong. Unlike the weak, who have natural predators, there is no need for me to train myself. Then why? Why was I able to deflect your sword? It's simple. Once you learn the fundamental movements, you can see the aim just by observing the initial angle of the strike. That was what Feldway explained, as if gently teaching him. But Zalario wasn't convinced. Don't be ridiculous. Just because you can see it doesn't mean you can deal with it that easily. Those with weak hearts, those without confidence in their own skills, would have been easily fooled by Feldway's words. However, Zalario was different. Sensing that it was a lie, he snorted. Having that pointed out, Feldway grinned. He continued his conversation with Zalario, as if he had no intention of hiding it. Ha ha ha, it seems you understand me well. However, you couldn't see through all of my tricks, could you? Tricks. That's right. Feldway went on the offensive. His movements weren't as monotonous as they had been before. They were those of a seasoned swordsman who was well versed in swords. And that mold was familiar to Zalario as well. It's similar. Is this Leon's movement? It is not a misunderstanding on Zalario's part. There is no way Zalario could have misinterpreted the movements of a former enemy, a worthy opponent. To the confused Zalario, Feldway says, I have never neglected my research. I have constantly observed all phenomena, continuously thinking about what is optimal. This applies to those who were ruled by me and Lord Michael as well. The emotions, thoughts, experiences, and various other things of those ruled by the ultimate skill, King of Justice, Michael, were shared with me. If that is the case, then the skills and levels they acquired are also within my grasp. That's what he explained, but he honestly can't accept it. Huh. Even though they're in the middle of a battle, he's speechless. He can't blame him. He was told that all the knowledge he gained through his own efforts, the experiences he had fighting strong enemies, and the techniques he had honed were taken away from him without his knowledge. Don't mess with me. Our techniques are not something that can be stolen so easily. Zalario screamed, brushing aside his polite tone of voice. And just like that, he turned his frustration into anger and unleashed a powerful, unrivaled attack with all his might. However, the result was cruel. With an astonishingly similar stance and the same amount of power behind it, Zalario's sword was stopped head-on. Feldway, as if to prove his own words, mimicked Zalario movements. Moreover, as if to flaunt his strength, he even adjusted his power just enough to avoid killing Zalario. Don't be ridiculous. The only one wounded was Zalario. The two forces, which were exactly equal in strength, collided, but Feldway had more than enough energy left. Thus, the recoil only sent Zalario flying. How many times do you have to mock a warrior? Zalario howls. Geniuses have nothing to do with ordinary people's anguish. To someone who can remember the contents of a textbook after reading it just once, ordinary people who have to read it over and over again, desperately trying to memorize it, might simply look like they are slacking off. They see only the results and place no value on effort. If only they could recognize the differences between themselves and others, and show a willingness to bridge that gap, they might be able to build a completely different kind of relationship. There was no heart in Feldway that cared about others. He was always thinking of believing he was right and guiding the fool. He don't think he's wrong, nor do he place any importance on other people's words. He's a very dangerous thinker, but sadly, that's what he's been made of up until now. That's why he don't understand. Why did Zalario get angry? He couldn't find any value in that reason. As such, he ended up asking a mercilessly cruel question. I don't get it. Why are you angry? Skills are supposed to be seen and stolen, aren't they? The conditions may vary, such as whether permission is granted or not, but the process remains the same. Even if one creates their own school of martial arts, tracing the roots of that martial tradition will inevitably lead to a limited number of sources. Only a handful of people are capable of creating something from nothing. At this point in history, such a feat can be considered nearly impossible. If that is the case, then developing something through imitation becomes the proper path. Setting aside questions of good and evil, the method Feldway employed was not necessarily wrong. In that regard, even Zalario had no choice but to acknowledge it. But that's not it. You're fundamentally wrong. After all, the techniques needed to be inherited along with the feelings of their master. Zalario is the founder himself. He taught his own subordinates techniques, and they had both polished them while subjugating the insectors. There was a definite sense of pride there. Leon was no different. There was a difference in power between them, but his skill with the sword was enough to make Zalario growl. That's why he was able to acknowledge his as a worthy opponent and communicate with him. There was a certain feeling there. He had something to bear. Ignoring all of that, Feldway only saw efficiency as simple. Zalario are water and oil, and they will never be compatible. Confirming that again, Zalario bites his lip. However, he was calmly analyzing it as well as angry. If they had observed all of their techniques, they knew they had no chance of winning. Feldway is currently holding back against Zalario, perhaps to demonstrate the gap in their abilities. If he were serious, Zalario would have been eliminated right at the start. To Feldway, the Zalario wasn't a threat. He didn't feel the need to dirty his own hands. Once he understood that, it would be foolish to feel it was an insult. With the timing that Zalario understood that, Leon and the others joined the battle as reinforcements. Zalario hesitated. He wasn't sure if he should tell Leon and the others the truth. No matter what they did, it probably wouldn't work, and no matter how things played out, they wouldn't be able to defeat Feldway. Outsmarting him was impossible, and even stalling for time only worked because of Feldway's indifference. If the outcome remained the same regardless of their actions, then simply watching in silence might be the better option. No, that's not right. In the first place, can I even trust his words? That itself is doubtful. Almost without a doubt, Feldway was telling the truth. But at the same time, he didn't think he was telling him everything. Zalario had instinctively assumed that he might be hiding something decisively. That was correct. As far as Feldway was concerned, it would be a problem if Milim awakened. One of Feldway's goals was to take in the dragon factor from Veldora, but the situation wouldn't allow it. Because if Feldway tried to take on Veldora, he wouldn't be able to afford full control of Milim. Right now, Veldora held that much power. Feldway had seen through it, and couldn't act carelessly. Our long-awaited prey has arrived, and now we have no choice but to leave it alone. Thus, Feldway decided to leave Veldora alone for the time being. Although he could win if he fought with all his might, he determined that prioritization was necessary. However, this did not lead to an improvement in the situation. With not only Chloe